It's a disease that does not discriminate.
It was complete bondage. I was a slave to a drug that was killing me.
Addiction burrows in the mind.
It's a brain disease that has lifelong consequences if it's left untreated.
And destroys the lives of victims and those around them. Prevention is a strong defense.
Having your kiddos involved in things at school, having a good connection at school, community connections.
But victims caught in the addiction cycle are left feeling like there is no way out.
I just knew that I didn't have any more chances.
Tonight, in a News Channel 3 Addicted Michigan special, amid the darkness, we bring light. We continue our Addicted Michigan coverage tonight in a special way. I'm Kirk Mason. This is an Addicted Michigan Town Hall.
I'm Alexis Burdine. For nearly 6 months, I've been diving into how addiction impacts our community. Throughout conversations with addicts, experts, and officials, News Channel 3 goes beyond the data and into the heads and hearts of those fighting addiction. Last month, you heard from his fiance. She said a heroin overdose killed the love of her life. Now, that man's mother's reaching out to us. She's asking parents to listen to her warning while there's still time.
Or if this helps one more parent to pay a little bit more attention to their children, then I feel like I've done my job here.
Michelle Sloan says her son struggled with heroin abuse for years. Doing everything to help him, she says she went to all of his substance abuse meetings. She even turned him into police when he was using.
He was furious, but I knew he was going to be safe in jail.
She says when her son was behind bars, she could only sleep at night, knowing he wasn't using. The tough love didn't come easy for Sloan.
It took me a long time, honestly, to admit my son was a heroin addict.
Sloan says once she stopped trying to keep her son's addiction a secret, she started to find resources.
One thing I can tell other parents that their kids are sitting in KPEP, go to those meetings.
KPEP is a West Michigan program offering resources for people who've been in jail and are living with substance abuse. Sloan says during recovery, her son talked to kids in the program to warn them about addiction. She says despite her efforts and her son's desire to get clean, it wasn't enough.
So do these other parents, just because they're 5 years clean, still pay attention?
She says the drug epidemic is ultimately why she buried her son. Something no parent should ever have to go through. A University of Michigan study shows 20% of 12th graders nationwide say they can easily get heroin if they want it.
What do you have to say to the people who are pushing these drugs, who are selling these drugs?
You're not just killing a person, you're killing a family.
Sloan and I talked about how overwhelming it can be to tackle addiction issues. Sharing her son's story makes a difference. We hope you'll share yours too. You never know who it may help. In the newsroom, Alexis Burdine, News Channel 3.
This is Ryan Ziegler.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
He has a safe home, successful business, and a happy family.
I mean, he'll tell my daughter every day, like, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're powerful.
It's the American dream. Ryan's living it.
I originally became addicted to opiates, which eventually led me to heroin.
Not long ago, he wasn't sure if he'd live at all.
You're at this point and so low in life, I'm wondering, man, if I die, who's gonna come? Are they gonna show up? What kind of music are they gonna play? Being in the midst of addiction, all you're doing is looking forward to how you're gonna feel better, thinking my life's over, and I kinda hope it is, to being here, it's a miracle.
With time, perseverance, self-accountability, and faith, he finally slammed that door. He's been clean for over 2 years.
I had faith that God would provide for me and has. So anything I could do to make my recovery better, I've done, and if you're willing to do the work, you can do it.
He says there's a stigma around drug addictions.
A lot of people said I shouldn't be doing this interview. You know, why advertise it?
He wants to change that.
My goal is to give people hope. Let them know you're not your addiction. You're not your past decisions. Once you can get past those things, you can really do anything. Anything you can think of is possible. So once I figured that out, everything worked for me.
He stopped using. He was offered a job. Then his drug record came up. The employer rescinded his offer. Now he owns his own business, Allied Property Systems. His goal is to help recovering addicts find jobs. To learn more about treatment, Ryan sought out how he built his business and his plans to help others. Visit our website. Go to WWMT.com. In the studio, Alexis Burdine, News Channel 3.
State data shows each year thousands of babies are born with opioids in their system.
The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services says between 2010 and 2016, doctors diagnosed 6,000 Michigan babies. We continue our Addicted Michigan coverage tonight. Addicted Michigan aims to help all of us address, educate, and eradicate addiction.
News Channel 3's Alexis Burdine joins us live from Ascension Borges Hospital as she explains what health professionals want expecting mothers to know. Alexis.
Hey, Erica. A Kalamazoo doctor says she seems to be delivering more and more opioid-dependent babies each year, and it's not a typical mother-child relationship. She says these women are empathizing with their babies, but not for a typical reason. They relate to their newborns because they also know what it's like to go through opioid withdrawals.
They are just super stiff as like a board. They're really rigid. Their tone is super tight. But they're shaking at the same time and jittery, crying, inconsolable.
Dr. Christine George delivers babies at Ascension Borges Hospital. She says the moment opioid-dependent babies are brought into our world, they're brought out of another.
Just like that's cut off.
George says babies born with an opioid dependency face short and long-term developmental issues.
Their brain cells are mad.
She gives some babies morphine shortly after birth to help reduce withdrawal symptoms. Blue Cross Blue Shield says these types of cases are rising nationally. George says some mothers try to lie about their opioid dependency, even when medical tests show otherwise.
Don't try to hide it, because that's honestly probably the worst thing that you could do for both you and your baby.
Krista Jackson is a nurse at the hospital. She too has a message for pregnant women living with substance abuse.
We're not here to take your baby away. We're just here to help you work through this process. The only way we can do that is for you to open up to us.
Both women say mothers or expecting mothers in this situation need to be honest with their medical doctors, nurses, anyone giving them prenatal care. It's the only way that they'll be able to get ahead of this issue and hopefully help their newborns. I have a full list of resources for women who may be in this situation. Just visit our website, WWMT.com. Live in Kalamazoo, Alexis Burdine, News Channel 3.
The FDA calls it a major issue, and so do Michigan health and education professionals. E-cigarettes come in all shapes and sizes, mainly small and easy to hide. This creates a problem for schools trying to keep them out of the hands of students.
Schools across the country are in a bind. They want to keep students away from e-cigarettes and vape products.
It is a major problem with youth.
Their task seems simple. Subtract the devices, add the education. It's not as easy as that. Steve Dieleman is a health education consultant. He works with Kent County Schools. He says teachers are concerned about students thinking these devices are harmless.
Their lack of knowledge about the risks associated with vaping, whether it's vaping of nicotine or vaping of THC.
Writing up this.
Dr. Brandon Hook is a pulmonologist at Ascension Borges Hospital.
The lungs are still maturing at that time. So when you're vaping, you're really causing harmful effects with development on not only brain, but also in the lungs.
He says although makers of the devices say they're safer than cigarettes, that may not be entirely true.
We really don't know all of the true consequences, but we are seeing more smoking-related diseases due to vaping that are mirroring that of which are seen in cigarette smoke.
The effort is to reduce the risk.
Alex Clark is the CEO of the Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association.
Vapor products or any other smoke-free alternative to combustible tobacco has always been intended for people who smoke. It really has always been about giving people who smoke a safer alternative to combustible tobacco.
While Clark encourages teens to stay away from all substances, he disagrees with the doctor.
We do know that millions of people across the world, even in the United States, have quit smoking by switching to vapor products, and their health has improved.
Clark tells me the reason electronic cigarettes come in small sizes is so users can easily carry them. He says the intentional design is meant to be convenient for adults on the go, not teens.
On Sunday, I share more of my conversation with Clark. He explains why vape products and e-cigarettes have a bad reputation. That's debatable, but Dr. Hook says one thing is not. Last year, across the nation, nearly 4 million middle and high school students reported to have tried vaping. He expects that number to continue to grow. In the studio with Addicted Michigan, Alexis Burdine. Allison Bailey says her loved one's heroin addiction killed him. It's not easy for her to talk about, yet she is. She says if sharing this story encourages one person to get help, it's all worth it.
I went down there and he wasn't breathing. And he had, you know, stuff happening with his mouth, and I had no idea that that's what was happening when I called 911, but it was too late.
Her future plans, goals with her fiance, it was all gone in an instant.
It can happen to anybody. And I mean, you make that choice when you love somebody who is an addict.
She says he was in recovery and open about his past heroin use.
As much as he talked about how miserable it was being in active addiction, I thought he would never have any desire to go back to it.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports in less than 20 years, nearly 1 million people have died due to drug overdoses. Allison says 5 years into the relationship, she saw a change in her fiancé. Things she didn't put together until years later.
There was some mood changes, but he was really good at explaining it away. He'd kind of like fall asleep, or the sweating, he'd sweat really bad, but he usually had an excuse for everything.
She says she didn't know he was using again until he was gone.
I was told the next morning that they had found syringes. Everything changed. Everything.
The National Institute on Drug Abuse says the number of people using heroin has been rising since 2007. Allison says her fiance was more than just a number.
He wore his heart on his sleeve, you know, very like, hey, how was your day, beautiful? You know, he was just sweet.
She has a message for anyone out there in a situation like his.
It's destroying families, and people need to know it has to stop. This story, if you don't ask for help and you don't get help and you continue to hide it and use in silence, this story only has one ending. Like, it has to stop. They have to ask for help. They cannot keep this a secret.
Allison says it's important to speak up so that others don't stay silent. On Sunday, I'll share why experts say it's difficult for family members to recognize signs of addiction in their loved ones. Plus, I'll share extreme signs of addiction that you'll be able to look out for. In the newsroom, Alexis Burdine, News Channel 3.
A Pew Research study shows 54% of teens say they spend too much time on their cell phones, and 2/3 of parents worry about their kids' excessive screen time use.
Yeah, experts are sharing tips for concerned parents. Our series, Addicted Michigan, aims to help all of us address and eradicate addiction.
Would you want your kids using their devices the same way that you use yours?
Doug Crawford is the curriculum director at Protect Young Eyes. The group promotes internet safety for kids.
Even if you as a parent, if you can't say 3 amazing things about yourself, you have no business being online and social media. You're going to be looking and trying to find your identity connected to your online persona, and you are going to then shape and become less of who you truly are to please people that many of them you don't even know.
Dr. Rajiv Tandon agrees. He is the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the Western Michigan University Homer Stryker MD School of Medicine. He says social media impacts 3 parts of the brain.
The first part is the mentalizing network. This is what we use to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. The second part is the self-referential network. This is the side of ourselves that we showcase on social media. He says the third part is the most important, the significance network, which is a reward and reinforcement system. It relies on the same chemical that fuels substance abuse disorders. Dopamine.
So what happens with social media is this particular structure is activated. And if we are constantly on social media, it's continually activated.
Dr. Tandon says online interactions can feel more significant than in-person interactions.
Following someone who's famous or rich or beautiful, you tend to think about, well, I should be that way or my life should be that way. And if it is not, it might contribute to low self-esteem.
He says for those reasons, parents should monitor their kids' social media. More importantly, parents should monitor and promote their kids' self-worth in the physical world so they aren't searching for validation in the digital one.
You can't think of social media and impact of social media without the context of what the other experience of the child might be and what the parent-child relationship is like.
In Kalamazoo, Alexis Burdine, News Channel 3.